Like notes through the hourglass, these are the songs of our lives.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Songs of Our Lives. I am Brad Rose. I am a musician, a composer, a writer, the founder of Foxy Digitalis, and somebody who thinks about music and sound far more than is probably healthy. Each week I invite on a guest and we talk about the songs and the music that has stuck with them, has been there along the way, and a lot more. And we end up really just hanging out and having way too much fun and then bringing you all along for the ride. This week, I am thrilled to have Jeremiah Chiu. He's had a string of incredible records in the last year and a half, 2 years. First was the recordings from the Åland Islands with Marta Sofia Honer, and then last year had wonderful solo record in Electric Time, and then just to kind of cap it all off, and the one I'm most excited about, which is saying a lot because I loved those other two records, The Closest Thing to Silence, which is he and Marta collaborating with the one, the only, the legend himself, Ariel Kalma. It is, and all of these are on International Anthem, which feels like such a wonderful serendipitous fit for the music that Jeremiah makes, and just, I don't know, and just the things he does and the way he approaches things. I really love this record. I love the story of how it happened, which I'm not going to get into. I'll let Jeremiah tell it. Ariel Kalma is genuinely a hero of mine. I admire his work so much. It's been really influential for me. And so when I saw that when this got announced, I think I pre-ordered it within like about 10 seconds because I was just like, oh, this is like dream collaboration right here. And unexpected too, because I don't know, I didn't really see it coming, but then it makes a lot of sense, and you hear the record, it really makes sense. I highly recommend going to Ariel's Bandcamp page because there is just a treasure trove of incredible, beautiful music there. He is always digging through his vaults, through his archives, and sharing stuff and putting stuff up there. It's so worth spending a good amount of time on. And with that, though, you should also spend a lot of time with The Closest Thing to Silence, which is out Friday, February 2nd. Ariel Kalma, Marta Sofia Honer, and my guest this week, Jeremiah Chiu. My guest today is a musician, a composer, a educator, a synthesist. I don't know. Welcome to the show, Jeremiah Chiu. How's it going?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here to do this.
Yeah, well, we'll get into this in a minute, but you put me through the ringer trying to get prepped for this. You gave me a lot.
I'm so sorry. Hey,
it's great.
To be fair, these are hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
That they also take a little bit of time.
Yeah. Before we get into that, though, of course, you have the album The Closest Thing to Silence that you and Marta Sofia Honer did with Ariel Kalma. Yes. That is coming out on February 2nd. And when this got announced, I was so excited because, like, Ariel's one of my favorite artists, musicians ever.
Yes.
So I would just love to know, like, how did this come about?
Yeah, I mean, it surprisingly is quite straightforward. He DM'd me after listening through the last record I did with Marta, recordings from the Åland Islands. He just basically had expressed, that he had enjoyed it, and I remember that day because he DM'd me, and I was like, Marta, this can't be real, like it's real DMing me right now. Because I've also been a huge fan of his over the years, beyond the work that the collaborations he's done with Rob Lowe and Sarah Davachi and other, just kind of like, I think his record with the hand on it from 1970 3 or 5.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, I think it's Late Tom.
Yeah.
I've listened to it so many times on YouTube, and just over and over again, and then really got into all of his work when Revenge put out the compilation as well. But just kind of was digging because he's got so much material. But he basically had asked us if we wanted to collaborate, and then an opportunity came up to do so through the BBC because the show Late Junction had basically kind of pairs people that haven't collaborated before together to make something new. This was all done remotely at the time, but basically they had asked Ariel to do it, and Ariel had suggested Marta and I join. And so we started by just improvising, sending recordings back and forth, and then beyond that session or that show, we just were like, there's so much material here to mine and continue to expand upon that we just kept on working together kind of in spurts where there would be like really intense activity and then a little bit of downtime and then coming back to it. And then International Anthem had heard the stuff and they were like, what are you going to do with that? And it's like, well, let's do this.
Yeah.
And that really helped always push it forward and have the sort of ears on it and the guidance. So
wow, I can't even imagine getting that DM. That must have felt incredible.
Yeah, it's a weird time. Everyone's on there. It's funny.
So, like, over what period were you guys working on this?
Yeah, this is basically it was like August last year. What month is it? Not last year. We're in January now. If this was last month, it would have been August of 2022 is when we started, and then the show aired in September of 2022, and then we had kind of chipped away until the end of the year, took a little bit of a break, and then basically in May of 2023 we kind of just like knocked it out.
Wow. And so this, like you said, this is all done remotely. Do you have any plans because he's in Australia, right?
Yes.
Any plans to go down there?
I would love to. I mean, we're open to it.
Right.
Happy to go.
Well, it's like I said, I'm really excited. I think he's when I think about, this is kind of a weird tangent, but I think all the stuff going on with Bandcamp and all the
right,
like people like him, like it could be such a huge loss if it goes away because his Bandcamp is
I know, it's like it's unbelievable. It's a treasure trove.
Yeah, and it's like every week his archives just must be bottomless.
I know.
It's so, it's like that's what Bandcamp, one of the things that it's so great for is
I see it's like he does that and Patrick Shiroshi does that.
Yeah.
Weekly records.
Right. Do you are you familiar with an artist? Is it Bernard Xolotl?
I don't know if I am.
So he's French, and he kind of came up same time period as Ariel and was making like ambient new age kind of records back in the 70s and 80s. I had never heard of him until this was a couple years ago. You can follow people's fan accounts or whatever on Bandcamp, and you get, oh, they bought this. And anyway, Carlos Nino was one of the people I follow. And I was like, Carlos keeps buying all this stuff by this guy. And anyway, it's the same kind of thing. Like I think, he's in his 70s or something, and he's just every week it's like, well, here's a new piece of music that I've been working on. And I love it. Anyway, weird tangent, but
I'll check it out. You just outed one of Carlos's sources now.
Yeah.
Everyone's going now.
Yeah. Any plans to return to the Åland Islands?
We were there last summer doing a show as well, and it's always really fun to be back there. I mean, summer there is incredible. The sun doesn't set. It's very calm. Man. The more familiar you get with it, the sort of the more fun it is to go each time. You're kind of like, well, I know my things that I need to do, which is I got to get their cheese, mustard. And then you're like, great, and ride in a boat, and you're good to go.
That's sounds amazing. I've been Sweden is one of my wife and I met because of a mutual love of Sweden, and we had been there separately before we met, about a month apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's every time we talk about, like, we want to take our daughter there. And after when your record came out and reading about the Åland Islands, I was like, this is a place we should go if we ever get over there.
It's kind of rare to find a place on planet Earth that takes more than one day to get to, because you can't just fly directly there. You got to get a ferry after you get out of the airport, etc. And there's like scheduling involved. So yeah, it's kind of fun to have that adventure there.
Yeah, I'm someday, and I'll make sure to get the cheese and the mustard. Okay, well, I could sit here and talk about this record and all this stuff forever, but let's get into the meat of this whole thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So before that, so you prefaced when you sent in your stuff so I could prep for this, you prefaced it with, and I love this, it's a conversation, you said it's a conversation you had with a friend of yours, and the sentiment was that it's sad to think there's just so much amazing music that you'll never hear in your lifetime. And this is something I think about all the time. But the funny thing is, or maybe not the funny thing, I think about it in the sort of from the opposite side. And to me, there's something weirdly comforting about the fact that I know there's music out there that I probably would love that I may never hear, or I don't know. But I just love the general sentiment of, because it is so overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, and it was said in sort of this sort of sad way that it's just all this beauty I'll never get to experience, and just like these different experiences. And then I'm sitting here looking at your questions, and they're just like, name one. You know, and it's vast world. So,
yeah,
but yeah, let's go for it. Let's start naming.
All right, and I will. The questions may be a little different this time because there were some you didn't answer, which is okay. I think that especially in this, like, I think in the spirit of like Ariel Kalma's music is a very like positive energy in the world. That's where we're going to keep our focus today. So to start, what is the first song that you can remember hearing?
And you want me to list all the things, or just kind of start?
just
okay. So
however you want to do it, we'll make it work.
I put in two of them, but the one I thought of was I just called to Say I Love You by Stevie Wonder. And I put this in there because it's kind of like that first song. When you said the word remember, it's something that I actually remember calling, in a very sweet way, calling my grandparents and singing that song as
my gosh.
On the phone. And it was sort of this, tradition that we had when I was quite young. So that kind of stuck with me over the years, and even into my youth as a punk rock kid, listening to like that, I don't know, Me First and Then Gimme's record where they covered old songs. I was like, I gotta cover this Stevie Wonder song. So yeah, that was really what popped to mind. It's beautiful. It's nice to hear. Stevie just has a magic.
Yeah, I mean, Stevie's one of the best ever. It's funny, I have this memory of this song, like, it's very, and I hadn't thought about this until I was getting ready for this, that my sister and I, she's 3 years older, and we used to, when we were really young, we would record ourselves singing songs on a tape recorder, like you do. And the three that I remember there was a Beach Boys song. I think it was Surfing USA, maybe, because that was one of my dad's favorite records. Somewhere Out There from An American Tale, and this song. And I totally had spaced on, and I'm sure my mom probably still has those tapes, which is kind of a horrifying, wonderful
find them. We have to hear them.
But it's and the other song I also wanted to mention, because you put also Jim Croce's Operator.
Yeah.
And like, these are two kind of perfect songs.
Yeah, I mean, this, I think a lot of it was just that was what was playing in the house. Mm-hmm. And whenever I listen to Operator, it sort of reminds me of that time and place. Kind of puts you back there, and you're kind of like, this is a sweet, sweet song,
Was there like a lot of music playing in the house and stuff, like growing up? Was music?
There wasn't a ton. My dad just kind of had like a chunk of CDs that he would play. One of them was Croce, one of them was Stevie Wonder, and then there was like an Enya record, a Fleetwood Mac record, and not too much beyond that regularly. But then, when I was answering this song, I was like, do I put in like Minuet from Suzuki? Because I grew up playing, it's just, those are truly the songs that have also stuck with me for all of time. But I was like, no, this is actually the song that I think. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so not a ton of music, but I was practicing piano and violin a lot. So,
did you start playing like pretty young?
Yeah, I think I was 5 or 6. Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, so do you consider yourself a crier?
Not really.
Okay.
Well, maybe joyful laughter kind of tears more often because I do a lot of stupid stuff at the end of life for the fun of a laugh. But I don't know. I can't remember the last time I actually shed.
Well, so what along those lines though, what's a song that will, whether it makes you actually cry, like puts you in that sort of place where if you're not, it doesn't make you actually cry, you feel those kind of feelings.
I mean, that's like the joy of listening to all this music. And I kind of like intentionally, when answering these questions, kind of veered a little bit because I listen to so many different things on a regular basis. I sort of like, I'm a voracious listener. But for me, the song that would make me cry, or that I feel very, that I could hear the emotion is Andata or Ubi from Ryuichi Sakamoto on that Async record. I was thinking of both that record and like, Black Star, the Bowie record, because these are both like records at the end of somebody's life. And with Ryuichi, like the first track on that, I mean, he just has that quality of, harmony or that sensibility of melodic writing that is super evocative and emotional. Andata is like, it feels very, like it just expands and crushes you by the end of the song. It kind of keeps on growing and it feels very powerful. But Ubi, I listened to more and more, and I was like, there's this pinging pulse through the whole thing that just feels like time is very much in front of you, and you're battling or grappling with it.
Yeah.
So you kind of hear him playing against it, and it's just kind of devastating to listen to sometimes.
Yeah, I was thinking about that with Ubi. It definitely has this. Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. And then, with his passing and stuff, it just, the gravity of it is just heightened to an unimaginable. It's so heavy.
Yeah.
And then on Data, it's like every note is like this little dagger or something,
Exactly.
and it builds, like you said, it builds up and it builds up to the end. You're just shredded.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's. Did you shed tears? Are you a crier?
It's funny. Like I've become more of one in the like my daughter's 10, and I always say that sort of unlocked something but it's not stuff that I normally would think like, I don't know. But this music gets me so emotional. Like I have to be in the right place to listen to him these days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting because with all this stuff, and it's a sentiment that you'll hear me talk about a lot, but when I'm making my own work, especially in the realm of the electronic or modular or et cetera, synthesis, I'm always looking for a way to find the sort of human part of all of that stuff. And so, these recordings, when you hear that ability to really be present, or you kind of feel the human in the song, you're kind of like, that's an achievement in itself.
And that's the music, I feel like it often sticks with me the longest or whatever. It's with Sakamoto marrying this incredible compositional, but just the technical ability and all those things, but that human emotion and combining them in a way that nobody else can. And it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there's a level of honesty there, so it's kind of to feel.
Yeah. Well, okay. On the flip side, what's the song that'll put you in a better mood?
I know this one. I was like, I could have just endlessly listed stuff. I'm just, very quickly. I'm kind of they all feel slightly in the same realm, but they all have different touch points for me. So I put down Bizarre Love Triangle from New Order because it's just any of that stuff in the realm of new romantic and synth pop of that era. I love that. As a teen, that was kind of like finding that stuff beyond like, I don't know, alternative music in America, Green Day and Prodigy or whatever. I was like, this is a realm of different music that feels really good. And I learned a lot about synthesizers from all those bands: Depeche, New Order, Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah. I feel like Bizarre Love Triangle is one of those songs where I don't even have to hear it. I can just think of the intro, and it instantly just kind of makes me smile because it's one of those songs you just know so well and it's so ubiquitous. But it's like that. Dun, 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 it's just like makes me feel good.
I love those, the songs that you just use a trigger sequence on a drum machine to do the whole thing. So I put that down. I put down Chicago by Roy Ayers because I think it's just like that was a song that also just reminds me a lot of Chicago, and I love his sort of talk singing in it, and the vibe is immaculate.
Perfect vibe.
Yeah. Teardrops by Womack and Womack. If you watch that video on YouTube, it's so good.
Yeah. I'd never seen the video until this, and I was just like, oh my God, this is great.
They're great. And then both the Never Too Much by Luther Vandross and Arrow Through Me by McCartney and Wings, where those songs are like in the beginning, they just have that like chord progression or that thing that sinks you into a song, and you're fully there with them. So they're very sweet.
Was like 80s and 90s R&B, like was that just thinking about like the Womack, Luther Vandross? Like Vandross is to me one of my favorite singers ever, and I feel like it doesn't get enough love sometimes. But were those kind of like big things for you?
I think like it's funny because a lot of this stuff also just comes through learning synthesizers and getting really into vintage gear. So from something like New Order, you kind of keep going backwards in time, and then you hear what happened is that I got really into electro boogie and boogie funk, and then disco, and then soul, and they kind of just like went backwards from like the mid 80s to the early 70s, and you kind of listen to the instrumentation and truly just the pocket, just trying to find songs that have these really beautiful production qualities and pocket to them, which I think Teardrops is great.
Oh my God. I always love like the production of that sort of era, and I don't know, I'm a sucker for that stuff. And
totally. And there's like something funny with when you hear somebody on a song singing and you just know they're doing it with their eyes closed.
Yes.
And their hands are on their headphones and they're just singing eyes closed. You're like, this is too sweet.
Yeah, God, I hadn't heard Teardrops in a long time, and the video is amazing. Everybody needs to watch the video. Like, I always put together a playlist on YouTube of all the picks, and so I will make sure to include the official video, and everybody needs to watch it because it is amazing.
Sounds good.
All right, well, Jeremiah, what is objectively the best song, greatest song of all time? And I love that you broke this down into categories. This made me so happy.
Well, objectively, I was like, how do you, how does that touch every single thing? And so I was like, objectively for vibe, objectively for the arrangement and joy, objectively for a reflection on the times, because objectively music does so many things for so many people in so many different ways. And so I was like, oh my gosh, how do you answer this with just one? But yeah, once again, I put in, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence from Sakamoto once again, because that I think is an amazing piece of music where you have this blend of like just melodic beauty, and then it's also just got like a really great production sound to it. So there's sort of the technical and the emotional together. It has no words. So, well, the version I was like listening to isn't the David Sylvian version,
Right.
but just the composition itself it moves really beautifully. It's very emotional.
It's a perfect piece of music. Oh my god,
it's great.
I've introduced so many people to Sakamoto because of that song. Where, like, I mean, I think that's how my wife first heard it, because it was very early on when we were together, and it was Christmas, and this is on my Christmas. Like, I put this, it's not a Christmas song, but it is whatever. She was just like, "What is this?" I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
you don't know?" Oh. And then I probably got annoying. I was like, "Let me tell you about Ryuichi Sakamoto."
right.
But
Well, it's also fun because that, there's like the piano version, the solo piano version, there's the David Sylvian vocal version. See, if it's objectively, there's three that span different approaches to that same song. So you can hear how it functions truly. So, yeah. And then also, I put in for the arrangement, for sort of the joy, this to me sounds like humans making music together, which is the I Am the Black Hole of the Sun, by Rotary Connection, also, which you can hear a version of from that International Anthem put out those Stepney recordings last year.
Yeah.
But this Rotary version and his arrangement and the whole thing, you're just like, there's so much music. It's a symphony.
Yeah.
It's a symphony in like a matter of minutes,
Oh my God. It's the song that makes me just like happy to be alive. It is so, I'm a sucker for those kind of like choir-y, it's not like choir, but like the group
gospel
vocal. Yeah. The gospel, like, oh my gosh, put that in this arrangement with it's got the groove and all the, like I said, there's so much music.
I know. If you like just write out, I was like, how did you arrange this? Because it starts off with like a very simple guitar, and you're like, that could be the whole song right there. And then it comes in, another thing comes in, and then the drums come in at like a part where you're like, I can't even really understand how it got in. It lands immediately into the deepest pocket, and then it's going, and then the choral parts of it have some dissonance to them, and so like there's all this tension, and it's just mind-boggling.
I know it is in the space of however many minutes. It's like an entire universe of sound, and it's so good
for sure. And then the last one was kind of a simpler one and maybe more of an obvious choice, but A Change Is Gonna Come from Sam Cooke, which is also just like, you could hear just the vocal on that, and it's kind of the best thing I've ever heard,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was thinking about this song the other day and how it's like, I mean, beyond the performing, just like the subject matter and the lyric, it's like 60 years old and it's still.
Well, that's one this could also go into the bucket of songs that make you cry, because it has that emotional, evocative quality, but it's also just like, here's somebody just being as real as they can be right now, and what are we supposed to do with this?
Yeah. So. Well, all three great picks. I can't argue with any of them. I mean, not that I would. That'd be weird.
I'm sorry that I was like, I'm just gonna answer what I.
I love it. When I got this yesterday, I was like, it made me really happy. It was like, there are he's made subcategories of the categories. This is, I know, awesome.
This is what I do, both as a designer and an educator. I was like, I categorized.
Yeah. I'm
organized information.
Yeah, got it exactly. All right. Well, we're changing speeds here. And what do you think is what's the most romantic song?
Yeah. So, romance, I always think a little bit about just like the mood it puts you in, of course. Mm-hmm. And I there was a couple things I kind of started to leave stuff out because I was like, this is going to get, talking for all day. But I put in Gosto. Gosto del Sol by Milton Nascimento and Lo Borges on the Club Desquina record. That's the one that that record itself, front to back, is one of the greatest records of all time.
Yeah.
And you can't really, I'm like, that's probably the record I've listened to the most, front to back. And that middle, this song comes in that section where it refrains the string melody, and it's like, oh, this is so good.
I know. Yeah, that record is absolute perfection from front to back. Oh my God.
Yeah, I just love the way it moves, and once again, the arrangements and things like that sound just incredible. So,
yeah, I was actually, when I was looking at some of the, because obviously the lyrics it's all in, it's not in English, but I was looking at some of the translations, and God, some of the lines in this song, like the one that was in the shadows, the sun is forgotten. I was just like, God, that's a beautiful, and it, and yeah.
Well, I think that's what's also really amazing about that is it's like, I don't know all the lyrics, but it still translates, right?
Yeah, they communicate that, like everything that it actually says is communicated.
Yeah,
without knowing what it says.
All right, we're moving this into objectively.
Right. Yeah,
shifting.
It's getting promoted.
Yeah. So that, and then I put in "Please Let Me Go" by Eddie Harris. It's the first track off of "Sings the Blues." I love that song. I used to put it on every Sunday. I still kind of do sometimes, like first thing, because it's like this really sweet song. It's kind of a great way to wake up. He basically sings into his trumpet, so it's a very strange sound.
I know.
It's great.
Yeah, the vocal production on it's like this, it's amazing, but it's like, it's so strange. But it's one of those things where if you just tell me about it, I'd be like, I don't see how this is going to work, like in the context of this song, but you listen to it, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this one, it's called "Please Let Me Go." He's basically crying into his trumpet. Do you want to hear a trumpet cry? Listen to this song. I love it. It's just really sweet, And then, of course, this guy's in love. Burt Bacharach. Any Bacharach stuff, I'm sucker for. Jeff Parker and his quartet over at ETA would always throw this cover in of this tune, and it was incredible. I've recorded it on my voice memo so many times over the years.
Oh my gosh.
But I love that. I was like, all right, you're a Bacharach head too. It's so sweet.
Yeah, I feel like this song is like the sound of being swept off your feet or something. It's or like wanting to be swept off your feet. It's like so silky and just effervescent. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, what a time it must have been.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, no, I was glad that like Burt Bacharach hasn't come up on the show yet, and which surprised me because I love Burt Bacharach, and so I was very, like, I was excited about all, because again, like all of these are, and I feel like all three of these have, I totally feel like the romance of them, but they all have kind of, it's like a different angle of it or something.
I know. Yeah, romance is complex. It's all of these questions, I was like, they're so complex. I got to come at it from different angles. So.
Right. Well, and that's like always the fun thing for me on this is like, I feel like I've said to so many people, it's like, I learned so much. It has less to do with what the songs are you pick, but just kind of seeing how people approach it. You learn a lot, and that's fun. All right. Well, in a different speed here, what is a song that changed your perspective on an artist?
Right. So I misread this at first, and I was like, changed my perspective as an artist. But then I reread it, and I was like, changed my perspective on an artist. And this, this is not information that I've made public always, but I wasn't always the biggest Radiohead fan, controversial. But I'm learning to get into it now because I do think that their production and a lot of the stuff I think I was just like, as a Chicagoan, a curmudgeon-y Chicagoan, I'm like, nah, I don't want it. I'm not into the thing that everyone else is into. With the best band is Tortoise, which is true.
Which is true. Yes. No.
So the song was Idiotech. Of course, everyone knows it. It's so funny that I kind of was like re-listening to it through Paul Lansky, because I love Paul Lansky's work as like an academic music person, where I just loved Idle Chatter. I think that record, More Than Idle Chatter is incredible, and it's like computer. It's chaotic and textural and melodic. And then at some point, I was watching on YouTube, just going down the Paul Lansky rabbit hole, and then that other piece came on, and I was like, "This is a Radiohead chunk. Like, do you take that song?" And then I looked it up. I was like, they in fact did sample Paul Lansky. I was like, okay, they're obviously, tapped into everything, because why wouldn't they be if they have all the resource and time in the world to listen to everything amazing?
I had this. I didn't have any idea that they sampled this until I saw it. I was like, and then kind of was like going back and going, because I love that Paul Lansky record. And that, I've got like I don't know, Radiohead's probably my wife's favorite band, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know, I like, and I don't know how I feel about Radiohead, like, but things like this like push me. I'm like, okay, I need to, like you said, like reconsider some of the
I mean, I don't know, it just didn't catch me the way it caught everyone else. I didn't dislike it, I just didn't spend a ton of time with it,
right?
But I did like, as I was getting more and more into gear, that Tom York, or they would always be using the best gear. So they would have like a surge modular on stage. They would have all the Electron machine drums. I was like,
that's like, I do have like a memory of this song. I think it must have been like 2000 or so, I don't know, whenever Kid A came out, and they were on Saturday Night Live. And I just distinctly remember Johnny Greenwood like on stage with his like modular rig, or his, I don't even know what, but it was the first time that I had ever really seen anything like that, and was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I appreciate that, because that is like, it's not the easiest synthesizer to wrangle in, let alone put into sort of a pop song context. So definitely requires a lot of effort to get to that point.
But knowing that they sample Paul Lansky now, just kind of, it makes me look at it in a different light. So perhaps you've changed my perspective on Radiohead as well.
So that's what we're getting into this year, 2024.
Finally.
You guys heard, you've heard Kid A, it's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. And hey, maybe now, people who are Radiohead fans will check out Paul Lansky if they haven't, because More Idle Chatter is amazing.
I know, it's great.
So are lyrics, are you a big lyrics person? Like, do you pay attention to a lot of lyrics?
I don't always, because I'm always listening to the timbre for, like, you catch myself having to go back and find the lyrical component. Because I'm not, when I'm writing, I don't write from that perspective. I think story is really important to me, in terms of like trying to convey some sort of narrative. But the lyrical part, I think that I usually I just listen to a ton of instrumental music. So that's the thing, is that there's not a ton of music always that has lyrics in them. And what are your favorite lyrics in different ways? In different ways. Well, you'll see that I listen to a ton of YMO, Yellow Magic Orchestra, and all of the offshoots, Sakamoto, Yukihiro Takahashi, even the production, engineers, and all the tethers. But entire song, I love the lyrics of Perspective from YMO, because I think it's just so, it's almost like mundane, and it makes it poetic because of its sort of plainness. And I don't know if it's like it was a translation thing, or just like that was just the poetry that he was writing, but I love the lyrics of it.
Yeah.
They're very straightforward. You got to listen to it, but it's just kind of like, it feels like it's just somebody observing every day, you know?
Yeah. And I hadn't paid close attention to the lyrics for this until I really like it. And then just in the context of the song too, like the production, like, I don't know, I think it makes it even better.
Yeah. And I just love a line that, like, you know, that doesn't try to be overly, poetic, even though I put some in here that are like that, but where it's just like, every day I brush my teeth.
Yeah.
That's so,
I know.
Hey, me too.
Yeah. It's like
twice a day sometimes.
Yeah.
I love that one. For the single line, I loved I'm Not in Love by 10cc. That line, Big Boys Don't Cry. There's a great short documentary on YouTube that tells of the making of it and how they brought the secretary in to record this line, and then it became this big thing. And I kind of love that, you know. But that song also is just mind-boggling when you hear and see the video of the production, where they basically like turned a mixing console into an organ, essentially recording all their voices and then just kind of fading them in and out. And you have this batch of, like, I think it was like several hundred voices at the same time. So,
wow, holy cow. That's amazing. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And then I put in, these two actually I listened to a lot. Him by Rupert Holmes, and then Alone Again Naturally by Gilbert O'Sullivan. Because Rupert Holmes, that story is just fucking funny. You know? You're kind of like, it's like sung by a kind of like this story basically, or the song is called Him, and it's basically just like, it's either me or him, and it's this sort of story of him like finding a pack of smokes that aren't his at his partner's house or something like that. And I was like, you're pissed and you're writing a song, and I don't know if it's from real life experience, but it sure could be, and it's just funny to me, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally see that.
But I like the picture it paints.
Yes, I love the narrative of it, and like kind of the way it arrives at the ending or the climax, and it's great. Yeah.
Well, that one's worth listening to for sure, because there's the comedy for me is like, there's this moment where he's basically just like, you got to choose. It's either me or it's him. And then he does like a falsetto, like solo. And then he jumps into like singing, in such a goofy way that you're like, it's just amazing.
I always wonder too, like, I would love to be a fly on the wall during the sort of songwriting process of something like that. It's like, how did you get here? Like, I love it and it's amazing, but it's so like kind of wild and unexpected. And it's like, how did you get here? I want to just know.
I mean, there must have been some lightness when they're in there, and it's fun for them. I think you hear that a little bit too. So, yeah. And then Alone Again Naturally is like one of the world's most beautiful, saddest stories.
Oh my God. It's brutal.
It's so sad. So,
and it just piles on too. It's like every verse you think like, oh my God, how can it? Oh geez, it got worse.
It just keeps getting worse and worse, So but it was one of those songs that also I listened to a lot without paying attention to the lyrics at first, because I was just like, oh, the progression of the melody and the song itself was so beautiful. And then the deeper you get into it, and you're just like, oh my God, it's so dark.
Yeah, I remember years and years ago, looking it up, and it's supposedly not autobiographical. I was like, that's good, because
I don't know, it feels pretty, but
yeah.
But yeah, and then the last one, it was Surf Subs, the Beach Boys. That just is like, half the time you listen to it. That one I like because half the time you hear words and you can't really, you don't really hear them, and you kind of hear the sound of them. And I think that's one that really paints like a rhythmic poem for me, where I'm like, oh, sometimes I'm trying to sit there and listen to it through understanding what the images are, and other times I'm listening to it just in the cadence and the rhythm and the just like the sheer beauty and madness of it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many layers to that song. I mean, that whole album is
Yeah, totally.
unbelievable. But yeah, I like that. Okay. I've lost my place. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the last song that you completely fell in love with?
Yeah. Okay. So this is this year it was Laura by M83 because I was so fortunate to be asked to open for their tour, and so I did this amazing tour opening for M83 solo. And they were all these huge sold out shows across North America or the US, and whenever you're on tour with a band or an artist, whether you are into the music prior or not, like you end up just falling in love with all the stuff because you see it each night.
Right.
And then I just ended up listening to it while I was driving from gig to gig to get even more familiar, because I love, of course, listening to the production of a record and how it's performed live, both of which were just super amazing. And then on that record, Laura is just like, it's so good,
So good.
And I don't know if I've just been, I just hadn't listened. I hadn't been down this road in a while, because I'm always listening to stuff from decades prior, and I loved it. And now it just has also a lasting memory of nostalgia of just that time.
Yeah. I've never seen them live, so I'd be really curious, because the production on their albums is unbelievable. It's so impeccable, and just
the live show, it's kind of mind blowing. To me, I was like, I felt so fortunate to be like by myself every night back there watching, and then coming to the front and watching, and it basically was like, this is as good of a show as you could put on, period. Like it was just like, it really, the lights, the crew, the production, the sonic quality of it, the front of house was like, it was mind-boggling. It sounded
awesome.
So good. So
yeah, it's such a good. I feel like they have that sort of like cosmic anthemic thing that they do that I'm a sucker for it, like that kind of thing. Like it, and yeah, this is. I honestly, I forgot they had a record that came out last year. So whenever I saw it, I was like, record. It is. It's really good. Yeah.
I really loved it. And then the other song I put in here was Stardust by Yasuaki Shimizu. It was also just like something that I came across, and I hadn't heard this particular song before, and I shared it with my friend Ben Babbitt, who's also an amazing musician and arranger, etc. And we both kind of geeked out on it for a second, and he was like, it sounds like he's in love with music. I was like, that's such a good description, or a way to put it, is like when you can hear that somebody loves it in the song. I'm like, that's rare. I feel like,
yeah, that's a perfect. I'd never heard this before either until this, and it's one of my notes this year is like, there's this real air of like mystery and romance to it, and I think, but like, yeah, it's this feeling of I'm being in love with music, and maybe not entirely understanding why, but it does, like, the why isn't as important as the
right.
Yeah, I want to know more about him in this, and
he got some great, incredible music out there. His band Mariah, his solo stuff. He was also just doing a lot of work. His compilation music for commercials, incredible stuff.
Man, like you said, there's so much beautiful, amazing music. Like it will never end.
I was like, I'm trying to get through as much of it as I can in this
hour. Okay, well, what cover song is better than the original?
Oh man, I couldn't. I was sitting here and I was like, what am I gonna put for this? This one, I don't know.
Oh, maybe this is the answer to what lyric you thought you knew. You've got okay, my bad. But the questions were kind of combined together, so I think I misread it. Okay, scratch all that. Forget that happened. What's a lyric you thought you knew, but then you learned it was something else and it blew your mind?
Right. Well, I did think about the cover thing for a while, and I just was like, I can't find the thing, because oftentimes it's hard to make a cover.
It is, you know, it's funny, you know, one of the songs I feel like that's been covered a lot and that's on your list is Teardrops, because, you know, there's like the
exactly.
Elton, and none of it's like, no.
It doesn't even come close.
No. So
I did recently hear a cover, I forgot who covered it, of Misdemeanor by the Silvers, and I mean the original's amazing and the cover's amazing. I don't know if it's here, but both of them are amazing.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some of those where it's like they're both really good, and it's, you know, but anyways. So the lyric that you thought it was one thing.
I basically just is like, I have to put in Battiato in here because he is somebody that has changed. I've listened to also infinitely his record Fetus, and then his records Click and Pollution and all the other stuff, but like and Zaha. And Battiato is just one of those. Actually, is Scotty piece from International Anthem. Him and I sort of got along in the very beginning of our friendship because we were both obsessed with Fetus as a record. But the track Una Cellula, which is, you know, it's like, this record is in Italian and I've been listening for forever. Over and over and over again. And I love the record. And then when people ask, oftentimes in like this kind of situation, they're like, what's the best record? And then of yours that you could recommend? And I was like, you got to hear Fetus by Battiato. And then I realized that what happened is that there was an English version of this record that he had sung or put out. Man. That's like the only thing that was like on Spotify or other streaming stuff for a while. So people were like, this record is strange. And I was like, what are you listening to? And then I listened to that version of it and I was like, this is pretty weird. You know? Well, it was just different. You know, I know the record title is Fetus and I know that the song is about the set being a cell. But just hearing it in English, I was like, I don't know if I would recommend you listen to the English version of this. I would firmly stay with the Italian version of that record. So that's kind of what blew my mind. What have I been sharing?
I didn't even realize there. I'm learning this right now that there's an English, because I've only ever heard the Italian version. Maybe I shouldn't listen to the.
I think you can skip it. You know, I think that Did he do English versions of any of his other records, dude?
You
know, I assume there are probably exist out there some things like that, but
I don't need to hear them.
I know, but I love Battiato. I love that these records. You know, he was like he's quite experimental in those early records, and then became like the foremost singer of of pop in Italy.
Fetus, like Click is it's like a 30-minute record that does, you know, we were talking about like Rotary Connection, how it's like just so much in that album. It's like, oh my God, it's like an adventure. It is.
I love it.
I love it so much.
It's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah. Well, I hope if there's an English version out there, I don't want to know about it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, we're in the home stretch here. We got 2 questions left, and these are kind of the 2 big ones. So we're going to start with, what is the song that means the most to you? And they're not necessarily the song itself, but like you associate it with something or someone or an experience, and it's just.
Yeah. I love that this one I was able to lead at one song. And it's Nervously by Pet Shop Boys. I thought, I was like, you know, I gotta, I don't know that everyone knows how much I love the Pet Shop Boys, and now they might know, but I listen to them a lot, and they're kind of like for me. And because, you know, it can go 2 ways. I think that sometimes when I even listening to it, it's like I listen to it from a production standpoint and from just like what they were doing. But I also recognize that it's also very theatrical, you know, the way that a song is very theatrical, and it's not for everybody when you kind of listen through all of their catalog. But this song I love. I think it was, it also means a lot to me because a friend, Dan Jubal, that had passed away, we had a shared love of Pet Shop Boys, and especially that record Behavior. So I've sort of listened to it infinite amount of times. But also he let me know, he was like, well, Behavior's the best record because Faltermeyer produced it. And I was like, oh, Harold Faltermeyer is involved. Okay, and now I hear it. I hear it in the delay. I hear it in the way that the production is set forth. And then you A/B that with any Moroder record. You're kind of like, yes, this has that feeling to it. So,
yeah. It's such an amazing song. It's like
song.
All the like synth layers and stuff. I feel like I know I heard this when I was pretty young because Behavior came out in like 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there. So I'd have been like 10 or 11. And my sister's 3 years older. So like I remember hearing this, and I feel like subconsciously maybe it was like really formative because like a lot of these sounds, like synth sounds and like the timbre of it and stuff, I feel like it's sounds I've been chasing my whole life.
Sure. But yeah, I love Pet Shop Boys. I think that they were doing, I love listening to their records.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm sure there are people that don't, but I'm like, how can you not?
Yeah.
Well, in this moment in time, as we sit here in early January 2024, Jeremiah Chiu, what is your favorite song?
I know, right? I went back to doing 3 songs. And I'll say this because I put these in there because it's also what I've just been obsessively listening to. Oftentimes when people make records, I think that there are two, I think I've recognized that there are one of 2 routes that people go down, which they're like, I don't listen to anything. I'm only in my own world and I don't want it to influence. And I actually do the opposite, where I sort of get really obsessed with different approaches to music making. And I find it to be like part of the research that I do is actually listen to, not by any way of like, it never actually, I never try to like mimic it, but actually I'm just listening to like how it was formed and what the vibe is. So Rain Dance off of Sextant by Herbie Hancock. That and In a Silent Way, of course, were kind of these 2 records where I'm like how they formed it, how it was edited, how it was cut. I'm just like listening to really just where the edit points are and, how that band is operating. And then Acapella by John McGuire, which is like kind of the opposite end. Well, all of these are sort of long songs, 20-minute songs. And the acapella one is like, it's kind of like the opposite approach. It's fully composed, but it has this, it has also some sort of feeling of randomness or chance that's happening too. So I like that one comes from kind of like a very sort of computer generated realm, and one is completely improvised, and they also both involve electronics and have a human feel to them.
Yeah, no, all 3 of those are, oh my God. And that's really interesting, like listening to the edits and stuff, especially thinking about like Rain Dance. And when I think about how that song is put together and how it's, it's like this electronic kind of, like the first minute of it, I don't know, it sounds like the best version of a lot of experimental electronic records I get promos. And then then like the sort of more jazz influence side comes, and it's so, and then it goes back, and then it's like all the, it's
and then In a Silent Way, incredible edit. It's like 2 songs that got smashed together, and it emerges in the middle. It just goes to a different song, and then it goes back to the first one.
I know. How again? Like I would love, like I was saying about earlier, like be a fly on the wall. I just love to like hear the like process of that and like understand that. And In a Silent Way, I mean, I don't know, we'll never catch up to Miles.
Exactly. It's all amazing. But yeah, that's a little bit of like foreshadowing of what's to come. There's been some good big band records that we're working on with the group that have been playing. We did some recordings together, all live improvised, and they're kind of being compiled together and edited right now. So
wow, that's exciting. Man, okay, well, stay tuned in the coming years, probably, because everything takes well, this was awesome. This was so much fun, and I really like I said, I love you gave me a challenge, but I was so up for it. And It's going to be really interesting because I usually try, like when I make the playlist, to just pick one song of each category.
I know, which you can do, but you can also make the world's longest YouTube. Like, no.
We'll see where it goes. Who knows? It'll be a surprise. Okay, well, the closest thing to silence is out February 2nd. Any shows or anything coming up that you want to mention?
Yeah, there's a couple shows. I mean, we're doing just got announced in Chicago on, I think it's in May. It's in the middle of May. I'm opening for Suzanne Ciani, which will be amazing.
Oh man.
It'll be a great show that Reflections is putting on. And then, a couple here in LA at the end of the month. Booker Startrum and myself are doing some duo stuff, both in mid-January with Leah opening for Leah Bertucci, and then for Mary Lattimore at the end of the month, and then just a couple sprinklings of other stuff. But
awesome. Well, that's exciting. Well, thanks again, and and everybody go to the shows and grab the record because it's awesome. So,
thank you so much for having me.
Once again, thank you to Jeremiah for taking the time and putting me through my paces. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, he sent me like 30, I think it was 33 tracks. And going through, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that didn't make the playlist. Maybe I'll make a second playlist. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll make a full playlist for Patreon with all the songs, because there are so many good ones on there. I think we talked about them all, so you can kind of search for them and listen to them. But I will try to put a playlist together for Patreon if I have time. Speaking of Patreon, would love it if you joined us over there in support of the cause. For as little as $3 a month, you can get these episodes a week early and get the extra Patreon section that is exclusive to those episodes on Patreon, which we have a lot of fun on those. We learn a lot of weird, random stuff about these artists that surprises the hell out of me, honestly. And just, it gets a lot of fun over there. So patreon.com/FoxyDigitalis, and everybody who is supporting it. And it means the world. And in a time where, of course, like music writing is hard to, it's a rough road out there. It means even more. So thank you. You can always check out the playlist, link to the show notes, check out the album out February 2nd, The Closest Thing to Silence. Holler at me on Instagram, on Twitter, Blue Sky, all those places. Send me an email, whatever you want to do. But no matter what you choose to do, which may be nothing, maybe, I don't know, whatever. But while you're doing it, keep on listening to whatever the hell you want.